Man fired for refusing to work while sick. Laughs when OSHA shuts them down. In an ideal world, every company would treat their employees with fairness and respect. The work environment would be a positive and encouraging place where personal growth is encouraged. The sad reality is that we don't live in an ideal world. However, when one Redditor was treated unfairly at his workplace, he hatched a plot with such a satisfying twist that his story went viral. Sadly, the reality is that we live in a world where people work 60 to 70 hours a week and get paid barely enough to make ends meet. Workers all over the world suffer from such injustices. One Reddit user, Furry Control, was one such worker. However, Furry Control managed to get the perfect revenge. Furry Control first shared his juicy story on the r/pro-revenge forum on Reddit. In his post, Furry Control, who worked at a popular pancake franchise, told the story of how they informed their boss about a hospital stay. This didn't go as well as expected, resulting in a revenge story for the ages. I was decently well-liked among the employees and had a very good friend who had just been promoted to shift manager by the former general manager, who was a really great guy that unfortunately got transferred to a different store against his wishes. He was replaced by a horrible, power-hungry shift manager that no one cared for. But this was just the beginning of Furry Control's troubles. So a typical work week for me was 6 days a week, between 60 to 70 hours a week, with Tuesdays being my only day off. My shifts ranged from 8 hours to as much as 18-hour double shift. Important later. I worked this schedule without complaint for years of my life, until one day things took a turn for the worst. Unfortunately, on September 10th, I fell very ill while at work with no known cause. This was accompanied by very severe stabbing pain in my lower right abdomen. I called the general manager, it was about 12 a.m. at this point, and informed her I planned on leaving to go to the ER, to which she told me if I left, then I would be fired. Now, at the time, I really needed this job, so not wanting to be fired, I decided to work through my shift. In absolute agony, he watched the hours tick by. He couldn't wait for his shift to end. I had 2 hours remaining, but it was hell to work through. Finally, 2 a.m. rolled around and I immediately left to drive to the hospital. Upon arrival, I was admitted almost immediately into the hospital due to scan results showing that I had an inflamed appendix. I called the general manager and let her know that I was being admitted to the hospital and would keep her updated. He thought that as long as he kept his boss updated, everything would be fine, but he was very wrong. Her response? If you're going to try to get out of work, can you at least find someone to cover your shift in the morning? Some people. Note, at this point, it was around 3:30 a.m. My next shift that she wanted me to cover was at 8 a.m. the next morning. A few hours later, I was notified that I needed an appendectomy and it would be scheduled for the following morning. I agreed, signed the release, and called up my manager to notify her. I told her that I would be out of work for at least a few days, but after surgery, I'd let her know. He emphasizes his next point. It is important to know that I kept her informed throughout my entire absence. I even sent her a picture of myself laying in a hospital bed after multiple accusations of faking. I still have the texts if anyone's interested. So surgery went smoothly, however they found that I had a gangrene infection in my appendix that appeared to have spread. Due to complications involving this, my hospital stay ended up being 2 full weeks. I was discharged at noon and drove to work almost immediately after discharge to inform them I was out of the hospital and cleared to come back, as well as turn in the hospital note, proving I was there. To my surprise, the regional manager is there. I walk in and find both the regional and the general manager at the front counter having a conversation. I slid the note towards them on the desk and informed them that I was cleared to come back to work. The general manager looked at me in utter disbelief. "Excuse me? You've already been terminated for no call, no showing for 2 weeks." I reminded her that I did, in fact, keep her informed and had proof. She cut me off and with an annoyed tone said that she'd give me another chance. I came back in that night for my shift, luckily working with my friend, the shift manager. I was also training a guy I'd never seen before, not uncommon as I was a floor supervisor/trainer. My friend later called me into the office, and that's when I learned that I was only rehired so that I couldn't file a wrongful termination suit, and said that the person I was currently training was my replacement. The general manager had plans to fire me the next morning. As shocked as I was, we immediately hatched a plan. So this restaurant was dirty, huge roaches infesting the kitchen and dining room, black mold, rotten food mixed with fresh food, water leaks so bad the carpet in the dining room is literally decaying, you name it. We have reported these issues to the general manager multiple times, but nothing ever happened. My friends sent the trainee home with the excuse that our labor was too high, and I spent the remainder of my shift taking pictures of every continuous health code violation I had seen. I went as far as cooking orders just so I could get pictures of the grills and kitchen areas without suspicion from other employees. Finally, the next morning rolled around. I woke up to a call from the general manager. Sure enough, she demanded that I turned my uniform in because I was being terminated immediately. I drove up there and asked for the reason behind my termination, and she replied that I was a lazy worker who always complained that they had hours. Please remember, I averaged about 64 hours a week and never complained. Not in the mood to argue, I simply turned in my uniform and left. But that's not the end of my plan. I was one of the only food safety permitted employees. I had just renewed my permit, so all of the information in the class was fresh on my mind. I also distinctly remember the health inspector teaching the class stated that if we wanted to report our workplace, just come in, ask for him, and bring evidence. I went straight to the health department, asked to speak with him, and supplied 7 written paragraphs of every violation, as well as all of the pictures that I had taken to back up my claim. He informed me that with the picture evidence, it would be hard for the restaurant to fight. He also informed me he would follow up with a surprise inspection the next morning. The next morning, I woke up and found messages from my general manager calling me a snitch and a griner. Luckily, my friend recorded the entire inspection from the office. Due to how recent this story is, I will not be releasing it due to it showing faces as well as names being mentioned, but it was beautiful and it showed who the true whiner was in this situation. The regional manager was slapped with a hefty $7,000 fine for allowing unpermitted employees to work, and the restaurant was ordered to shut down operations to clean. However, being a barely profitable franchise, the franchisee, who owned many other locations, closed it down and ran off. Now, as much as I want to feel bad for the people left without work, I don't. And for the decent employees, the story actually has somewhat of a happy ending, as many have moved on to better things.